Hey, so once again this week's chapter contains a lot of intricate linguistic references for us to cover, as well as a pretty big mystery to a certain unknown individual at the end. But who is this individual? Well, let's find out. To start things off, in Speed's flashback, Otama calls her by the nickname Umami. This was a nickname that Luffy gave to her at the start of Wano. Umami is a word of Japanese origin that is also used in English as one of the 5 basic flavors, but generally, to be more specific, Luffy is just calling Speed Umami because it's a word related to food. However, the pun here is that Uma is Japanese for horse, making the nickname related to her appearance. We've seen before that Luffy often makes nicknames based on how other people look, so in this case he named Speed after food because umami simply matches with uma, horse. The way umami can be written in Japanese with the kanji it uses can also be read literally as horse beauty. Speaking of which, we see this word uma once again on the sail for Speed's ship, which features the English writing speed as well as the kanji uma, which, as I said, stands for horse. Speed herself is named after the card game Speed, while Daifugo is also named after a Japanese card game. While we're on the topic of Daifugo, he uses an expression where he says to wash all water away, which is a Japanese expression for asking to get over something. It's very similar to the English expression of water under the bridge. Otama's plan, which was first mentioned a few chapters back, is to use her Kibidango to turn gifters to her side, in order to turn the tables. This is fitting, since her Kibidango are like round white spheres, just like the white stones in the Go board from last chapter. So, essentially, Tama's Kibidango are the extra white stones that we need in order to win the game. In fact, this symbolism between white and black pieces can be seen in Speed's design, the first gifter that Tama changed, whose color scheme is half white and half black, which symbolizes this change in allegiance from the black stones to the white stones. But did you know that Tama's ability to change others through the use of Kibidango is not just a mechanic of how her devil fruit works, but in fact, and say it with me, a reference to Japanese mythology? And that in fact this entire arc is one big reference to said myth? Because yes, Otama's powers reference the famous myth of Momotaro, the young boy who in ancient Japan was said to travel to the island of Oni, known as Onigashima, in order to slay them. Sounds familiar? Well, in said myth, Momotaro recruited the help of a dog, a pheasant, and a monkey by offering them each a piece of Kibidango. So, Tama being able to tame animals through the use of Kibidango is a reference to this famous myth, and her going to Onigashima to help Luffy and the others makes a lot of sense because it's just like in the myth. The 3 animals from the myth have been often referenced in Japanese pop culture. In fact, they're even referenced in the codenames of the 3 admirals in One Piece. Akainu means red dog, Aokiji means blue pheasant, and Kizaru means yellow monkey. But in this case it's been unclear if they're being represented once again here at Onigashima as well. People have speculated the dog could be Inuarashi, though it could also be Komachiyo in this case. Marco is the pheasant and Luffy the monkey, because Monkey D. Luffy, but it's hard to say. In fact, it's debatable if Momotaro here represents Luffy, who is known in Wano as Luffy-taro, Momonosuke, since he has Momo in his name, or Tama due to her powers, though they could all potentially be representing the famous hero of legend, and it isn't meant to be anyone in specific. Anyway, one of the gifters Daifugo feeds a Kibidango to has the writing Iberix on his head. This could be a misspelled Iberico, which could be a reference to jamón ibérico, or Spanish ham, since Spain is said to have some of the best ham cuisine in the world, and this gifter is a pig from which ham is made. Nami then strikes ulti with an attack called Thunder Lance equals Tempo. This is the same attack she used to finish off Khalifa at Enies Lobby, where her Clim attack connects with a Thunder Cloud to create a piercing lance. Most of Nami's attacks have an equal sign in the middle and end with the word tempo, the Italian word for weather, though the equal sign is often left out of translations. Fittingly enough, the way she prefaces these attacks is by speaking like a weather lady, warning others of incoming weather. The kanji for the attack simply reads as lightning spear equals tempo. As ulti falls and crashes into the ground, one of the gifters can be seen with the following set of kanji on his back. These kanji, if read a certain way, can indicate someone falling violently and piercing into the ground, just like ulti did. Usopp uses his slingshot to feed others kibidango in a move called Hisatsu Kibidan Boshi. This is a pan because the boshi at the end stands for star, which Usopp uses as a word in a lot of his attacks. However, since the bo in boshi sounds like the go in kibidan go, he merges both words to call it kibidan boshi, making it kibidan star, though the pun doesn't really translate that well in English. Frankie hits Sasaki with a sword called the Franken. This is another pun because ken is the Japanese word for sword, but Franken sounds like Frankie, and more particularly Frankenstein, which is believed by some to be the source of Frankie's name, since just like the iconic monster, he's someone who stitched himself back to life. The attack Frankie uses is called V-Flash of Victory, attacking in a V shape. The V stands quite clearly for victory. This reference might be very obvious to English readers, but it's a bit more hidden in Japanese since victory there is written in Japanese, with a word that doesn't use the V, and so the reference only becomes more apparent and easier to understand when translated, while it is more subtle in the Japanese version. Also, this attack sounds very over the top, like something out of a Saturday morning superhero cartoon, an attack of victory, which fits with how the General Frankie feels like an action figure taken right out of a morning cartoon. Bug Maria, as you can likely see in most translations, speaks in the Japanese version with a very tauntingly affectionate tone. She often adds hearts at the ends of her sentences, speaking in a rather slow manner by adding a lot of triple dots to her sentences, and doing so even when describing very morbid actions, such as breaking all of Robin's limbs. Which is quite ironic because Robin's specialty is breaking the limbs of others, and I wouldn't be surprised if their fight finishes that way. She also states that Sanji's life is in the palm of her hand. This is meant both figuratively and literally, since she is so big that Sanji easily fits in her hand. When Sanji tells Black Maria, "You shouldn't underestimate Nico Robin," something very easy to miss is that in this case, Sanji is not using any honorifics. Just 2 panels prior, Sanji refers to her with the usual Robin-chan, but in this case he calls her by her full name, Nico Robin, without honorifics, showing that he is serious and showing proper respect to her in this scene. Then in the following scene, Bao Huang gives a report on what is going on around the island, showing her seemingly devil fruit-powered abilities. Something I wanted to point out about Bao Huang is that in Japanese her speech pattern is always excessively excited. She ends almost every sentence with several exclamation marks and even lengthens many words in excitement, which shows just how energetic her personality is. This leads us into the scene at the end of the chapter, where a mysterious figure approaches the scabbards. There isn't much to talk about here in terms of linguistic analysis, but I still thought I'd throw this in because it's a very relevant topic to this chapter. So if we look closely at the figure, it appears to be someone of average size with long hair, 2 very large bangs falling down on both sides, a defined nose with outlined lips, and wearing a kimono. This description seems to easily describe one specific character, Hiyori, who does look a lot like the silhouette. And it would make perfect sense. Hiyori said she had to be somewhere, but we haven't seen her since then. But how did she get to Onigashima? And more importantly, what is the reason to leave her in a silhouette? If Hiyori came to the island just like Otama, what is the purpose to hide her in a silhouette if Oda could just reveal her being present in this chapter? Why build so much mystery and intrigue? And in fact, if we look more closely, the hair doesn't really match since we don't see many of her buns. So, what's up with all these discrepancies? Well, what if, and bear with me, this wasn't Hiyori, but actually Toki? The figure fits her even better and would explain why she is being kept a secret rather than being revealed outright. However, you might ask, but Arthur, didn't Toki die in Odin's flashback? Didn't we see her literally getting shot to death? Well, yes. Or rather, maybe. Because when Toki was shot, suddenly the camera turned away from her. And during that instance, we saw a sound effect. This sound effect signifies something falling down to the ground. Most likely this is just the sound effect of her falling to the ground after being shot and losing consciousness, but what if I told you this? In chapter 920, when we see the Scabbers flying through time and landing at the Odin Castle ruins of the future, the same exact sound effect is played. Now granted, this is because they fell down since the location from which they warp was on a higher floor that didn't exist anymore, but what if the two sound effects are connected, indicating that Toki leaped through time, giving her enough time to heal and get away? I could definitely be stretching it here, and to be fair, I am. In all likelihood, this is just Hiyori. It makes more sense, it's more logical, and Oda is probably just simulating her for the sake of having a more mysterious cliffhanger, and that's it. But there's a part of me that just can't shake off the feeling that Toki could still be alive. I've been speculating that for literally years at this point. I've always thought that Toki is still alive. I've been wanting to see that happen since early Wano now, so if this 3-year-long theory of mine does indeed become true, then that would be pretty incredible. But if it doesn't, then that's perfectly fine too. I just hope that something interesting comes out of this. So, do you think I'm right or wrong? Let me know, I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
すでに四皇の一人はスマイルによって何百人もの能力者軍団を組織中と聞く。It's free real estate.